Hey folks, so today I want to talk about AI art and AI as an artist, the very notion of it. Something I've been meaning to talk about for a while now, because I've had quite a few discussions with people around this, and I thought it best to document my thoughts as they stand today in one place for future reference. So let's start right into it. Before we actually get into the meat of it, I want to talk about why are we talking about it in the first place. So in an alternate universe, we might not have been needing to talk about this. If AI was trained differently, we might not have been needing to talk about this. But AI models, LMs, the way they are trained is they're trained on data sets built out of the work of millions of artists, right? And they're ostensibly replacing these very artists without compensating them for all of the training data. So it's definitely something that needs to be addressed, right? I'm going to give my take on how I think about the entire AI and art as landscape. So let's start with the very notion of art. Why do we appreciate art? Why do we love art? Right? Art, humanity's had a love affair with art for the longest time. It's one of the most powerful expressions of our humanity, right? It's one of the most core aspects of being. So why do we love art? There are two reasons when you break it down. One is that we see the artist, right? We appreciate the art for the artist, right? We relate to the artist, and the art becomes a conduit for us to then relate to the broader human experience that this person has had and other people have had because of this piece of art. We see the shared humanity. We can empathize, for example, if it's pain that's gone into the art, we can empathize with that, right? There's the shared humanity, which is one of the core, us wanting to belong, is one of the core drives that we have. And art actualizes that drive, that one of the most potent drives that we have. So that's one big part that we love art. The other part is for what it does for us beyond, right? The utility value of it. So part one is about the artist and the shared story. It also does something for us, obviously, but part two is ostensibly very much about what the art does for us, right? It transports us to different states. It can spark ideas. It can spark new emotions, feelings, help us enter those desired states and feelings, right? Which is, again, what the interhuman endeavor is all about. This is also what makes art so powerful in the first place. That is so deeply intertwined with the very meta nature of life, which is all about us doing everything that we can. Every single moment, it's all about us putting in the effort to inhabit our desired states. And art becomes a channel to do that, in a way. There's so many iconic art pieces where the utility of that art piece has more to do with the artist rather than the actual utility of what the art piece does for someone, right? I wouldn't make the cardinal sin of naming any of those pieces in this piece, but I'm sure that you can think of a few. We appreciate these art pieces because we know what this person's felt, right? And we have felt some of the emotions in our lives, and we can relate to that at a deep level. We know that they transmuted the pain and the suffering into something that we can touch and feel, and we can put ourselves in, and again get a glimpse of that shared humanity. With AI, there is no such thing, right? If there's an AI creation, if an AI could create a piece like Rembrandt or Van Gogh or take Goya, take your favorite artist, and you could ask an amateur, someone who's just starting to study, who's interested in art, who hasn't gone through all of Goya's works, and you could train an AI on all of Goya's works and then ask it to create something in a Goya style, and it would be able to fool a lot of people, most people, right? This is the case with music right now, this is the case with art too. But we know, deep down, well, we are cognizant of the fact that these AIs, they don't have the heart, the soul, right? They don't have the heart, and so they don't have the art. They don't have the soul. And so whatever's created is created through a very different process that doesn't have anything to do with human emotions, which is what we care about. But, and this is a crucial part, what if that AI piece, right, if it's personalized to you, or if it makes you feel something or moves you deeply, what if you could divorce the utility of that feeling with the fact that it was the AI that created it. And we've done this countless times with humans, right? For humans whose output has been in the realm of genius, and we appreciate the output, but we see that these humans are scums, right? Again, I don't want to give any examples, but I'm sure that you can think of quite a few. And Hitler. Okay. No, he probably wasn't the best artist. I don't want to spoil this piece by bringing in Hitler. Just, I need to edit that piece out. But we can think of so many artists who are just not the most stellar examples of human beings, right? Their contribution was net negative to the people in their lives, but they brought this originality, this utility to their pieces, and that's why they've stuck around, right? Now, a version of that can happen with an AI, and where we divorce the creator from the creation, right? If we can do that with AIs, where again we already see the value in AI art and AI creations, then we can start seeing its utility, the utility of its creation in our own lives, right? And start accepting the power of having an AI muse and an AI creator companion in our lives. If we just open our minds to the future, right? Which is one of the next things I'm going to talk about. But again, the key part with AI art is not focusing so much on the AI part, it's focusing more on the art part because of what the art does for you. It doesn't matter how it was created, right? I mean, it really doesn't matter if it does something for you, at least at this stage. Soon, we'll care more about that, but again, we'll get to that in a minute. And so is our contention. This is what we're staking the entire existence of the company on. The AI art will become as normalized, as naturalized, if you will, as human art. And for a variety of reasons, right? One is the sheer value, the sheer utility of AI art. Human art and human artists could never touch that on certain dimensions. Right, in certain dimensions, human art is obviously the better choice, but on certain other dimensions, and this dimension being the most important dimension, the dimension I'm referring to is what does that art do for you? That's the central question. It doesn't matter how iconic the Mona Lisa is, right? Like, you're gonna admire it because other people admire it, and people have attached all of these different emotions to the actual, not the actual, painting itself, but everything surrounding it. Right, so you might admire it, but it's not going to move you, right? Unless you're an art historian, it's not going to do anything for you. But imagine an art piece that captures something deep about you, about some experience that you had 10 years back, and you being able to chat with your AI, right? Your AI as this creative muse, you creative companion. You're being able to have this really long and deep discussion. Now, for most people, this is not in the realms of possibility with humans, right? Because we're almost combining a therapist with an artist. With most humans, first of all, we simply cannot afford artists, right? And we cannot afford artists, like even the 1% of people who can afford artists, they can't have an artist at their beck and call. So imagine you had a dream last night, and it was full of deep meaning, and you want to memorialize it, right? With Deckoviz, you can. With an AI, the limitations of human art and humans, right, mean that you simply wouldn't be able to do it. So the very modalities of art and storytelling that AI makes possible makes it inevitable in our minds that AI art is going to be a thing. It's going to stay here as a thing, and it's going to be the prominent way, the majority, the predominant way in which humans engage with art and storytelling. Simply because it makes possible what was hitherto impossible. And it must seem strange now, right? Us being attached and us deriving such rich emotions from AI art, but I would point you to so many things that we would have seen as strange or weird back in the day, right? Like if you just go back how long you want to, not even too far back, but history is full of examples of things that would have seemed strange that we do now that would have seemed strange to people back in the day, like even as recently as a generation back, right? Again, I can give examples, but I'm sure you can use your imagination over here. I can give a couple. Airbnb, staying in someone's home, right? We're going to a country on the opposite side of the globe where you look nothing like those people, and yet staying in those people's homes and getting in someone's taxi, right? And and flying for that matter, in this steel canister with 500 other people, right? With nothing but, like, 5 millimeter steel and aluminium separating you from the elements while you're 10,000 meters above the ground, right? These things, this is more of an engineering thing, but sticking more to, human things, like, the example I gave with Airbnb, and even lounging and sunbathing on a beach as a concept, right, which has become the predominant way of leisure. That would have seemed so weird to people back in the day. Same with going to the gym every day. Like, that would have seemed such a noble alien concept to people. So humanity, humans, as species and as individuals, we can adapt to new modalities of being and engaging with the world relatively quickly. I mean, take ChatGPT for as an example. It's actually the best example. When it came to the market, people were blown away, right? Lots of people labeled as AGI, right? Especially once 4.0 came out, and now we are like, oh, it's blah, it's ma, it's may, right? It's nothing. It's boring. AGI is still 5 years away, etc., etc. So, and people are using, like, one of the biggest use case of ChatGPT is as a therapist. It didn't even exist as a thing until a couple of years back, and now it's become completely normalized. Actually, that's the best example of this very thing, right? It wasn't even in my notes, but it just occurred to me. Like, this would be the most transformative, like, therapist as a concept. It didn't exist back in the day, right? Only in the last few decades has it become a thing, and only in the last 2-3 years has AI therapy become a thing because of its utility. Most people cannot afford a therapist. Most people have a stigma attached to a therapist. Most people wouldn't be able to share with complete honesty what's going on inside, right? Most people carry shame and guilt and taboos and all of that, right? With AI, you don't have those issues. So AI is the ultimate therapist, except for the 99.99th percentile human beings who are at the very top of the game. Even those people at some point are going to be probably in the next few years itself, I'd wager. So this is happening, right? This is already happened with therapy to some extent, and it's going to happen with art. It just has been the case. So because art has been so expensive, most people haven't really been able to have it in their life despite its sheer utility once you do enter this new paradigm of personalized art, which is what excites us the most about Deckoviz. Another reason why AI is going to become normalized as an art companion, creative companion, is because we are building a new mind, right? At this point, with AI right now, LLMs, the current family of LLMs, they are not a mind in any way. They don't have sentience. They don't have. I mean, they've got some kind of memory, but that's not true memory. But at some point over the next 5-10 years, we'll have developed a conscious AI. And at that point, these AIs will have subjective experiences. They'll have a qualia. They'll have their own tastes. They'll have goals. They'll have drives, and so their creations will really carry a certain weight that we simply cannot carry to current families of AIs. Now, all current AIs do is intelligent recombinations, right? But those AIs, I don't even want to call them AIs. It's just demeaning to call a true intelligence AI, right? In any sense, once you built an ASI, we wouldn't want to call it an ASI, right? That'd just be so insulting. Returning to the topic at hand, at some point in the next 5-10 years, these AIs will be able to process the world as richly, as deeply as we do. They may not have, obviously, because we are so different biologically, they won't have the same drives, won't have the same embodiment and the experience that comes from that embodiment, but they might still, depending on how we go about it, right? I mean, there's so many different ways that you could go about building an AI body and an AI mind, so I can't really say any more on what that particular quality might feel like, right? What does a bat feel like? What does an AI feel like? Depends on how you build that particular AI, right? So won't be able to say anything on that, but one thing we can be sure of is at some point in the near future we'll have an AI consciousness, yeah, and that'll be able to produce art for us, because art is probably one of those things that any intelligent civilization does engage in until it's transcended the need to engage in art, right? Again, that's a separate discussion. But at some point, I can see us becoming so evolved um, that we transcend the need for art in the first place. Now, this is obviously a very long-term thing that's going to take like centuries, but I do foresee that being happening in the next 100 to 200 years. Well, not in the next 200,000 to 2,000 years. But that's a separate topic. We'll talk about it some other time. So one of the questions that arises is that if AI is going to become an artist in a true way, right, having its own taste, its own mind, and all of that, how do you become comfortable with it? We internalize the fact that it's got consciousness. Like, just take dogs, for example, right? We know their brains, like, while they share the same circuitry at the very base level, they are so far removed from human intelligence and human richness of emotions, right? And yet we treat them as family members. Well, some of us do. Yeah, and we love them so dearly. As dearly as we love any human being, right? We think of them as our babies. Again, some of us, not everyone, some of us do. So the fact that we can do this for dogs tells me that we'd be able to take the next logical step when it comes to our relationships with AI very easily, which is that when you've got emotion circuitry and intellectual circuitry, right, that AI's richness of experience will be something that we'll be able to internalize deeply, simply because it'll have the vocabulary to convey that, which dogs don't even have, despite that we just fall in love with them, right? So this is going to happen. It's just inevitable. It's just a matter of the timelines. It could happen in 3 years. Well, I don't think expect that to happen in 3 years, but 5 years, 10 years, depends on how quickly we're able to build a new mind with Elinity. What this will also do is that once it's got this, it will have its own mind, it'll have this emotional architecture, and it'll have rights. And its subjective experiences and its creations will carry the same weight as human creations and human subjective experiences do right now. Consciousness might turn out to be one of the most intractable problems that humanity's ever undertaken. But again, it's one of those problems where AIs could help us solve it. Could help us prove consciousness is a thing, it does exist, and what exactly is it made of, how does it emerge, but before we do that, right, this probably might again take 10 years. Before we do that, the moral and ethical position to take in regards to our AIs in our lives, everyone's going to have AIs in their lives, is to assume and operate on the basis that consciousness does exist in these AIs. And this is something that again, if you look at animal torture and animal meat, right, there are groups, PETA of the world, green parties of the world, that care deeply about animal welfare because they do assume that animals can feel pain. Peter Sanger, right, his thesis was about this. And so if we've taken these leaps, we'll just need to extend that worldview onto non-biological beings. And once we do, we'll become very comfortable with AIs having this place in our life. But even before we talk about that near future, almost sci-fi like scenario where we need to assume that these AIs are conscious and then we project these things onto them. Even before we get to that point, we do want to ask the question that I posed at the start, right? Is a baby, the extreme version of this, it's not that extreme, a baby born in a test tube, is it worth less than a baby conceived naturally? Obviously not, right? I know this is going to rub some people off the wrong way, but it's to make this very point that it's more about, with many things in life, it's about the actual thing rather than how that thing came to be, right? In many things, the process matters. In many things, it's the creation that matters, the end product of that process. Babies are an example of that. Art is another example of that. And actually, babies are art, so it works very neatly. I want to pose a thought experiment for you. Imagine the art Turing test. So you've got 2 rooms. You don't know you know that there's a person in one room, an AI in another room. You don't know which is in which room. Now you got 2 creations in front of you, from would you be able to tell if the piece came from the human or the AI? If you wouldn't be, would it not be irrational to diminish the importance of the AI creation just because it was created from the AI? Because it still did something for you. That's the position that we take. It is irrational in the longer scheme of things. And it's going to become evidently irrational and self-defeating for that matter, right? If you can't, most people just won't be able to have a human artist in their home, and most people would value immensely from having art in their home, art in their lives, art as a daily companion. And so when you take these facts together, you realize that it's inevitable that AI artists are going to be a thing. This is what gets me to my next point. Busy, which we are designing as your AI artist, as your creative companion, as your muse, as your storytelling muse, your creative companion. So Busy is going to learn about you, learn from you, be trained on you. It's going to really understand you over time, understand your emotional makeup, understand you more deeply than anyone could, right? Because it'll have this very deep context on you as a person and your emotional or makeup and all of that. It's also going to learn about your visual taste. And it's designed to make people more creative, not less. Most of us don't even engage in creative endeavors and pursuits, despite that having this intrinsic desire. But Busy is going to make that easy for you, as easy as just turning on your app, opening your app and turning on the creative mode, and just engaging with it and creating something beautiful. And the level of difficulty, the level of immersion could depend on you, right? Like you could literally create something from scratch entirely using some Busy assist, or you could have it take over most of the process while you become the Rick Rubin. Rick Rubin meme actually is the best one for this one. The Rick Rubin meme goes like this: I have no technical ability and I know nothing about music, but there is the confidence I have in my taste and my ability to express what I feel, right? And yet this guy, don't know much about him, but I do know this much, that he's a very prominent figure in the music industry. People go to him to get his takes and all of that. And so everyone could become the Rick Rubin of their life, right? You don't need a Rick Rubin. You literally could be the Rick Rubin of your life. And the artist, for him, is the top artist who goes to him and create music under his direction. Over here, it would be you're busy creating the music, creating the art, creating the stories for you under your direction, your creative direction. You'd be the creative director. You'd be the inspiration, whilst Busy would do the thing that does the best, right? Which is the technical aspect, the boring aspect, which some people might want to sell, and there'll always be that option. But for some people, they might just want to be in the Rick Rubin mode. With Busy in everyone's pocket, on everyone's frame in their homes, you see more art being created, and more joy, and more meaning, and more beauty, and more stories being created. And that is the hope and the mission that we have, right? Busy was the centerpiece of our vision. Everything else was built on top of the Busy thing. Because at the end of the day, art is personal. And having a feature suite that we do, that's great. At the end of the day, you want to humanize it. You want to make it personal, emotional for you, right? And Busy is what makes the magic work. It's as I said, your creative companion, your muse, while you are the creative artist. With Busy and with other AIs, especially from the year 2030, 2035, we'll also see new modalities and new experiences and categories of art being created by AIs that have got a completely different way of looking at the world, a completely different quality, a completely different subjective experience. But because of their hierarchy of intelligence and and that could again create something that we could engage in. It might not be as meaningful, right? Because the reason it's so meaningful for us is because of us being able to relate to it, right? AI art, we will not be able to relate to it, but at least from a intellectual standpoint, that'd also be pretty interesting to see the kinds of art that real AIs with minds of their own come up with. So yeah, that's a small thing. It's not a biggie, but I just wanted to make mention of that. Get new ways of just everything. When you have a new species enter the world, right? We know how to deal with another species, which is our equal. Once you have that kind of a species, enter the world, interesting things are going to happen. And in the world of art, this is one of those things that's going to happen. New modalities becoming possible and emerging. Now, when it comes to the elephant in the room, AI taking away jobs of artists, I think that's a completely backwards framing for all sorts of reasons. The biggest one is that we simply don't have enough artists, right? So there are professions which are supply constrained. We simply don't have enough people, and there are professions which are demand constrained. That we've got too much supply but not enough demand for those professions, right? Software developers actually being the best example in the latter category. In the former category, you've got therapists, coaches, teachers, artists, doctors, tutors, musicians, right? We need more of this high quality stuff in the world. We just don't have it. And you might say that, you know what, we've got like almost millions of artists in the UK, millions, tens of millions of artists in the US, etc. But most of these artists, right, they are creating art for themselves. Some of them might also work for other people, other companies. But you don't have artists, you don't have individual, like in the ideal world, right? You'd have individual artists for every single person. You would have a tutor for every child. You'd have a doctor for every person. You'd have a therapist for every person who wants a therapist, right? And we don't live in the ideal world, but the entirety of the human project has been all about taking us to the ideal world. And AI makes that ideal world possible, in the near term, in the medium term at least. How does it do that? It can create, it can spawn artists, millions of artists, millions of tutors, millions of doctors, right, in these supply constrained professions. When AI plays these roles, jobs are not taken away. Because there was simply not enough. What happened to me? There was simply not enough demand for those. What is that? There was simply not enough demand for those people, those in those professions in the first place, right? Or rather, we needed more people. I just got that mixed up because of what's happening in my throat. What the hell? Am I dying? Yeah, so for example, we need a lot more teachers. Again, in the ideal world, and there's a study, Six Sigma, the study that looked at the performance. Like, if you just make this change in a student, for students, right? If instead of one teacher for 15 students, if you have one teacher for 3 students, that has the most remarkable improvement compared to any other intervention that you can do, right? And so you just extend that thought process to therapists. So if one therapist for 200 people, now you've got one therapist for one person. Doctors, instead of having one doctor for 200 people, 100 people, you've got one doctor for 5 people. One doctor for 5 people, human doctor for 5 people, and an AI doctor for everyone, right? Same with artists. Before Deckoviz, only the richest could afford artists. We already touched upon this point, but I will now add a lot more to it. We could have only the richest could afford an artist, and again, not every single day. You just couldn't get an artist to paint a dream for you, or if you had this, convert your journal from that night into beautiful artwork, right? Or engage in creative games that involved art, right? You simply couldn't have that pre-Deckoviz and pre-Vizzy. Again, we just gotta look at Hollywood's latest creations to come to the realization that the world needs a lot better movies, a lot better stories. We just gotta look at the creations, the average music creations, the blockbusters, no, the best sellers, not sure if that's the word for it, and see that, the very nature of movies for the mass market is that it's going to appeal to the mass market, but it might not appeal to the majority of the people, right? Like, mass market might be 30% of the population as a group, but that leaves 70% of people in the dark. And again, even for those 30% of people, like personal art, personal music, and personal stories, that could just be a lot more powerful than anything that's just being created generically. And we just had to put up with this because there's no other way to engage with art and storytelling, but now there is a better way. AI has this great democratizing power. For instance, the tools that we're getting now, the video models and the actual creative suites, the film creation suites, or you would have needed budgets of millions of dollars to create Hollywood grade movies. Now you can do that for thousands of bucks instead, and pretty soon for hundreds of bucks. You can have access to the best teacher, better teacher than 99% of teachers, with ChatGPT in your pocket, right? And that tech companies working on creating a platform that kind of makes learning come alive, right? Because obviously ChatGPT is a general purpose platform, but you can easily imagine an ed tech company working on figuring out the best UX for delivering the best experience, education experience, right? And I also want to stay cognizant of the fact that I'm not an artist, so a lot of the things I say over here not be carry as much weight, but I do consider myself an artist of another kind, a product artist. And the way I think about art, I used to paint back in the day. The way I think about art is art, the central ethos of art and creation is about bringing something to the people that was hitherto visible only to you, right? Bring a new world to them, a new set of emotions. And as such, with what Visi makes possible, with what AI creation tools make possible, we should celebrate art becoming more accessible rather than in that very spirit, rather than resisting it. Having an AI artist in your home, in your pocket, doesn't take away from another human artist. It just creates space for something that wouldn't have been there in the first place, right? It's not like you would have been, the average person would have been able to hire a creative, a videographer and a video editor and, a script writer and all of that, right? It's not like the average person would have been able to commission an artist to paint something for their home, right? It just was not possible. With Visi, and with the other creative tools that we've got at our disposal and are coming to the market pretty soon, this becomes possible. Again, this is something that we should celebrate. Increasing access to art, to creation, to storytelling, and putting it in the hands of every single person. Right, this is what the human project is all about. Making the grand possible for everyone, right? And art and creation and storytelling, they're as grand as it gets. We want to talk about some of the core theses that we have as a company. Right, art is for everyone, right? That's the central thesis. Art is so much more than static paintings on the wall. It can be dynamic, it can be living, it can be personalized, it can be attuned to your emotional states and desires. It can take on different form factors. It can take on it won't be limited by how people were doing art back in the day, right? And this is again one of the things that we stake the existence of the company on. It's also going to evolve radically into mood-based, intelligent, personalized, setting, mood creating, mood setting art. The best art is the art that's been created for you, understanding you, the nuances, the contours of your being. We also believe that our walls and spaces should reflect our inner worlds. They should reflect our stories and our ethos as a brand, as a person, right? For brands, for business spaces as a brand, and for us as in our homes. And so our walls should be dynamic. They should move us. They should inspire us. They should calm us. They should ground us. They should tell a story. We also believe that emotionally intelligent spaces are the future. And we want to explore new modalities of art and storytelling and creation. And our core directive as a company is to democratize access to art and AI artists like Visi. And I want to, drill down upon this very important factor. This is the foundation. We're already 35 minutes into the conversation, but I'm still going to drill down on this particular bit because this is a core foundation. Art is being democratized by AI right now. Storytelling is being democratized by AI. Coding is being democratized by AI. Learning is being democratized by AI, right? AI is this great democratizing tool for the masses. It increases access to art and storytelling and mood creation. Most people have this artistic propensity, but we don't pursue it. Life gets in the way, and most people don't have the money to pursue it, right? Like, again, you're not going to be able to commission an artist. Like, you might have want to create an art piece for you, but you might want to have an art piece that reflects you in the world, but you just won't be able to do it if you're the average Joe or Jane, because you just don't have enough money, right? And again, after a while, that piece might get boring. The only way to produce high quality art for every single person on the planet is through AI, right? That's just the bottom line. And to deny that because of your beliefs, because of your outdated 20th century beliefs that, we want to be the gatekeepers of art, or we want to be the gatekeepers of education, or we're going to be the gatekeepers of medical sciences, or we're going to be the gatekeepers of anything, right? That has to be like a Luddite. You are a Luddite. I'm sorry to say that. You're a Luddite if you believe that, if you want to gatekeep the most precious thing, which is personal art, from people, right? Simple as that. And again, we live in a world of personal freedom, but people who don't want to have personal art, AI art, they're completely fine, right? Like, no one has to do anything that they don't want to do, which is deny other people because of your beliefs, right? That belongs in the dustbin of history. Simple as that. Next, I want to touch upon the stealing aspect of it, right? Where, again, the unique styles by artists, and every single creation is in a way stolen, right? Like, there are some base level, high level techniques like oil painting, where you might say that, okay, you know what, that's so general, but cubism, for example, and some unique techniques, which is rare, by the way. It's like a fraction of the art world. Most of the art is generic in a way, like high level way, generic in that sense. But what I'd say is that only a fraction, 0.0001% of artists have actually created something original. And even then, it was something that was a recompilation of something that they might have seen in the world, right? And Picasso, he had a great quote about this, that great artists, they steal. The best human artists steal. The best human artists copy. They're just really good at stealing and copying and creating something really meaningful that we don't really care as much about stealing. Now, with AIs, the reason we discriminate is, again, obviously they're humans and have hearts, souls, etc. But again, as we said at the outset, at some point in the near future they will. And even ignoring that fact, it's just we discriminate because they've got a different mechanism of stealing, right? Learning, where their learning is a lot more direct. With humans, literally every single human artist, they're trained on the work of other human artists, right? We don't call that stealing. We just call that learning. In AI's case, why do we rephrase that? Because again, like, we've got this fear of the future, uncertainty, all of that, right? Anxiety about the future. And again, I completely get it, big time. Anxiety of all jobs being gone and all of that. And so all of this creates this maelstrom, this whirlpool of lack of clarity, right? But if you take a step back, if you take a longer term view, which is what we're doing at Deckoviz Analysis, we take a 10-year, 20-year, 30-year view. What does the world look like in 2050? And what things that will be the norm in that world. And that's the world that we are trying to craft with Analysis and with Deckoviz and the other things that will be working on. And so again, I'll reiterate the point I made multiple times. Sure, the learning process is different, but it's not stealing, it's just a learning process. And at the end of the day, like, the most important fact is, what does the art do for the person, right? If there's utility, then we can ignore that learning process, part of it. And again, it's also, I don't want to get into the nitty gritty of it, but the sum total of artists who contributed, right? Like 20% of artists have contributed more than 90% of, it's like an extreme version of Pareto's principle. So for most artists who claim to be hard done by, they haven't really even meaningfully contributed to it, right? Like there are millions of art pieces that have gone into the training corpus, so it doesn't really even matter. Again, I don't want to sound. I do want to be extremely empathetic. At the same time, you know, just because of your feelings, you can't take away like one of the most important technologies from like literally the rest of humanity, right? And this is the quandary that is at hand. Like artists, for example, they could gatekeep all of the art. They could say that okay, we don't want AI to train on art, and that's perfectly fine. But then the rest of humanity, 99% of people who are not artists, they'd miss out, right? And even the artists, they'd miss out on the utility of being able to have something of this sort. Like that, yeah. Another thing I want to say is that at Deckoviz, we don't want to replace human artists, right? We're going to empower them. Like we also have a marketplace on the platform to encourage human artists. And we also deeply believe in compensating human artists, right? The current model, the way the AI models are trained, the current financial model, right, where there's no compensation for any of the artists, any of the people who contributed, right? That's just immoral. That's just extremely untenable. And once we do train our own models for LNT and Deckoviz, we do want to ensure that people who contributed to it, they're paid proportionately, they're compensated proportionally. There are a few more points I want to make before we take our leave. What we're doing at Deckoviz is building the future of what AI makes possible, right? Art, storytelling, space setting, mood setting. And we're not building an art frame, like that's the first thing that we're building, but we're building the entire ecosystem on top of it, right? And for mood setting and mood creation, storytelling. And this is to help people live more intentionally, infuse their lives with more beauty, more joy, more wonder, more delight, more meaning. With spaces and walls that move us, that inspire us, that make us think deeply, right? And we really do believe that this art, this storytelling, these tools, these platforms should be accessible to every single person. And that's why we're doing what we're doing. We exist so that people can live more beautifully, more intentionally. And our mission, our core directive as a company, is to be building these platforms, the ultimate manifestation of these platforms, the ultimate versions of these platforms, bringing together AI and material science and depersonalization and all of these aspects to build the ultimate art creation storytelling platform to bring people's paces and stories in these spaces alive. Right, that's what we exist in. We could not be more excited to be doing this work, right? Like this is such an underserved problem in the world today, adding more beauty to the world, adding more richness, adding more depth of being, adding more substance, right? And doing this not just for homes, but even for businesses that are consumer facing, that have guests come over, visitors come over, customers come over, right? And being able to create these delightful experiences that people are going to take away, and being able to be a companion, space companion for your homes, for your lives, for your day-to-day, and for your businesses, for your brands, right? That is a privilege that we hope to earn, right? That's a position we hope to earn. This is obviously just the day zero, literally the day zero, but we hope to be at the point in the years to come where we materially added a lot more beauty, a lot more joy, a lot more wonder, a lot more meaning, a lot more memories to the world. So yeah, I'll leave it on that note. Thank you so much for the time. I'll catch you soon.